A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Blood and Moonlight. The laptop screen cast a pale glow across Harper Bennett's face, illuminating the dark circles beneath her hazel eyes. 3 a.m, and the logo design still looked wrong. She deleted the layer for the 5th time, frustration building in her chest. The client had been clear about wanting something modern, yet timeless, bold, yet subtle. Contradictions that felt impossible to reconcile, much like everything else in her life lately. Heat pressed against the window of her second-floor bedroom, the Seattle summer refusing to release its grip even in the dead of night. Harper pushed back from her desk, her shoulders aching from hours hunched over the keyboard. The medical bills stacked on the corner of her workspace seemed to multiply each week, a constant reminder of why she couldn't afford to lose this client. She crossed to the window, unlatching it and pushing the glass upward. Cool air rushed in, a blessed relief that made her close her eyes and breathe deeply. The neighborhood beyond was silent, houses dark, the street empty, peaceful, normal. Everything her life hadn't been since her father died 3 years ago, since her mother's diagnosis a year after that. Harper returned to her desk, determination renewed. She could do this. She had to do this. The cancer treatments weren't going to pay for themselves, and freelance graphic design was all she had. No employer wanted someone who needed to leave at random times for doctor appointments, who sometimes couldn't focus because she was terrified of losing the only parent she had left. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, creating, deleting, recreating. The design was almost there, almost right. Just needed one more element, one more tweak. The crash shattered the silence like a gunshot. Harper spun in her chair, heart slamming against her ribs. A massive shape blocked the open window, silhouetted against the night sky. For one frozen moment, she couldn't process what she was seeing. Then the shape pitched forward, collapsing onto her bedroom floor with a sound that made her wince. A man. There was a man in her room. Harper's hand found her phone, fingers trembling as she tried to unlock it. The figure on the floor groaned, a sound of such raw pain that it stopped her cold. Blood. There was blood everywhere, spreading across her hardwood floor in a dark pool that reflected the laptop's glow. "Don't move," Harper managed, her voice coming out higher than intended. "I'm calling the police." The man's head lifted slightly, and even in the dim light, Harper could see the intensity of his gaze. His eyes were an unusual color, catching the light in a way that made them almost seem to glow. Silver. No, that wasn't possible. It had to be a trick of the shadows. "Don't shift," the man gasped, his voice rough with pain. "They'll sense you. Not safe." Harper's thumb hovered over the emergency call button. "What? I'm not going to shift anywhere. I'm calling for help." "No police." The man tried to rise, his powerful frame shaking with the effort. "Can't explain. You're shifter. I sensed it. That's why I came here." The words made no sense. Harper stared at him, trying to understand through the fog of shock and adrenaline. He was injured. That much was obvious. Deep gashes marked his torso, visible through the tatters of what had once been an expensive shirt. The wounds looked like claw marks, not knife cuts. Claws. "I don't know what you're talking about," Harper said, forcing her voice steady. "Who are you? How did you even climb up here with those injuries?" The man's eyes closed briefly, and she saw the moment he realized his mistake. When they opened again, confusion flickered across his face. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what? That you broke into my house?" "Yeah, I noticed that part." "Harper?" Her mother's voice drifted up from downstairs, made thin by illness and fear. "Harper? What was that noise?" Panic seized Harper's chest. Her mother. She couldn't let Vivian see this. Couldn't let her try to climb the stairs in her condition. The last episode had left Vivian weak for days, and the doctors had been clear about avoiding stress. "It's fine, Mom," Harper called back, amazed that her voice came out so calm. "I just knocked over some books. Go back to sleep." The man on her floor had gone very still, his head tilted as if listening. Something about his attention made Harper's skin prickle with awareness she couldn't explain. "Are you sure?" Vivian sounded doubtful. It sounded like something heavy falling. "I'm sure. I'll clean it up. Don't try to come upstairs, okay?" You know what the doctor said about the stairs at night. A long pause, then a reluctant, "All right, sweetheart. But be careful." Harper waited until she heard her mother's bedroom door close before turning back to the stranger. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pain, yes, but also something else. Respect? Approval. "You protect her," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "That's none of your business." Harper kept her phone visible, a silent threat. "You need to leave. Now, before I change my mind about calling the cops." The man tried to stand, and Harper saw the exact moment his strength gave out. He collapsed back onto the floor, one hand pressed against his side where blood seeped between his fingers. His breathing had become labored, each inhale seeming to cost him. For the first time, Harper truly looked at him. Not just as an intruder, but as a person. He was older than her, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and features that would have been striking under better circumstances. His clothes, though destroyed, had been expensive. Quality material, custom tailoring. Not the outfit of a random criminal. "Please," the man said, and the word seemed to cost him his pride. "Just let me rest a few hours. By dawn, I'll be gone. You'll never see me again. You're bleeding all over my floor. You need a hospital." "No hospital. I can't. It would be worse than useless." He met her eyes, and she saw desperation there. "I'm asking for sanctuary, just until sunrise. Then I'll disappear, and you can go back to your normal life." Harper's practical side screamed at her to call for help, to get this stranger out of her home. But something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, made her hesitate. She'd spent the last year watching her mother suffer, feeling helpless in the face of illness she couldn't fight. Here was someone she actually might be able to help. "I'm not a doctor," Harper said slowly. "And I'm definitely not equipped for whatever this is. I don't need a doctor. I just need time." His eyes were starting to drift closed. Time to heal. People don't heal from injuries like that in a few hours. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You'd be surprised." Then his eyes closed completely, his body going limp against her floor. Harper knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. It was there, strong and steady beneath her fingertips. Too strong, really, for someone who'd lost this much blood. His skin was burning hot, fever warm in a way that made her pull back in alarm. She should call 911. This was insane. But her hand moved instead to her first aid kit, pulling it from the bathroom cabinet with shaking fingers. If he was going to bleed out on her floor, she could at least try to stop it. Harper knelt beside him again, scissors in hand, cutting away what remained of his shirt. The wounds underneath made her breath catch. They were deep, vicious, the kind of injuries that should require surgery. But even as she watched, even as she told herself it was impossible, they seemed less severe than they had moments ago. She cleaned what she could with antiseptic, her hands steady despite the surreal nature of the situation. The man didn't wake, didn't even flinch at what should have been painful. His breathing remained deep and even, his pulse strong beneath her checking fingers. Harper sat back on her heels, studying him in the laptop's glow. Who was he? What had happened to him? And why did those wounds look like they came from an animal rather than a weapon? Outside, the night began its slow fade toward dawn. Harper pulled a blanket from her closet, covering the stranger's torso. She should be terrified, should be calling for help. Instead, she found herself settling into her desk chair, phone in hand but unused, watching over this impossible man who had crashed through her window and her carefully controlled life in one devastating moment. The medical bills could wait another day. The logo design would have to be finished tomorrow. Right now, Harper Bennett had a bleeding stranger on her floor, and no idea what she'd just agreed to by letting him stay. But as the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, as she watched his chest rise and fall with that too-strong heartbeat, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that nothing in her life would ever be normal again. Chapter 2. Questions and Lies. Harper hadn't slept. How could she, with a stranger bleeding on her bedroom floor? Instead, she'd spent the remaining hours of darkness watching him, phone clutched in one hand, trying to reconcile what her eyes kept telling her with what her mind knew was impossible. The wounds were healing, not slowly, the way injuries should, but visibly, measurably, as if someone had hit fast forward on the natural process. By the time dawn light crept through her window, the deepest gashes had closed to angry red lines. The pool of blood on her floor remained, a stark reminder that this was real, but the man who'd lost it looked far too healthy for someone who should be dying. 7 in the morning brought the familiar routine. Harper forced herself to move, to act normal even when nothing felt normal anymore. She splashed water on her face in the bathroom, avoiding her reflection. The dark circles under her eyes had deepened, making her look older than her 25 years. Great. Just what she needed when trying to convince her mother that everything was fine. Downstairs, the kitchen felt too bright, too ordinary. Harper started the coffee maker, pulled out the pill organizer she'd prepared last Sunday. Vivian's medications had become a complex choreography of timing and dosage, each one fighting a battle they were slowly losing. The oncologist had been honest during the last appointment. The treatments were buying time, nothing more. Harper cracked eggs into a pan, the sizzle filling the silence. Toast. Orange juice. The breakfast her mother needed even when she claimed she wasn't hungry. Routine was important. Routine kept them both sane. "Good morning, sweetheart." Vivian's voice preceded her into the kitchen. She moved slowly, one hand braced against the doorframe. The chemotherapy had stolen her strength along with her hair, though she'd refused the wig Harper had tried to buy. "You look exhausted. Didn't sleep well?" Truth disguised as casual complaint. Deadline stress. Vivian's green eyes studied her with the uncomfortable perception mothers seemed to develop. "About that noise last night." Harper's hand tightened on the spatula. "I told you." "Just knocked over some books." The pile on my desk finally toppled. It sounded heavier than books. I had equipment stacked there too, made more noise than I expected. Harper plated the eggs, kept her movements casual. "How are you feeling? Did you take your morning meds?" The subject change was obvious, but Vivian let it slide. She always did when Harper asked about her health. Neither of them wanted to discuss the inevitable. Instead, they ate breakfast in companionable silence, pretending this was just another normal day. When Vivian mentioned wanting to come upstairs to see Harper's workspace, panic fluttered in Harper's chest. "Don't. I mean, it's a mess up there. And you know what Dr. Chen said about the stairs. You're not supposed to overdo it." "I won't overdo anything. I just want to see your latest designs. I'll bring my laptop down later. Show you everything. But please, Mom, the stairs are too much right now." Harper injected as much concern as she could into her voice, which wasn't difficult. She was genuinely worried about Vivian's health. The man bleeding in her room was just an added complication. Vivian's expression softened. "All right. But you need to rest too, Harper. You can't keep working these hours." If only rest was an option. Harper cleaned up breakfast, waited until Vivian settled in her room with a book, then climbed the stairs with her heart hammering. She'd locked her bedroom door from the outside. Smart, probably. But what if he'd woken up? What if he'd tried to leave and couldn't? The door swung open to reveal the stranger sitting on her floor, very much awake and alert. He'd positioned himself against the wall, legs extended, one hand pressed to his side. His eyes tracked her movement the instant she entered, that strange silver-bright gaze missing nothing. Harper grabbed the kitchen knife she'd hidden on her bookshelf. Ridiculous weapon, but it made her feel slightly less helpless. "Don't move. I wasn't planning on it." His voice was stronger than last night, though still rough around the edges. "Thank you for not calling the police. Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided what I'm doing with you." Harper kept the knife visible, a reminder that she wasn't completely defenseless. "Who are you? And I want the truth this time. Not whatever delirious rambling you gave me before." "My name is Callum." He studied her face, seeming to weigh how much to reveal. "I was attacked last night, ambushed by enemies who wanted me dead." "What kind of enemies give you wounds that look like claw marks?" "The kind that use unconventional weapons." Harper's patience frayed. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you right now." Callum shifted, wincing slightly. "I climbed your wall because I needed sanctuary. Your house offered that. You climbed to a second-story window, with injuries that should have killed you. That's not humanly possible." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement? Respect? You're observant. I'm practical. And what I'm observing doesn't make sense. Harper gestured at him with the knife. You've lost enough blood to need a transfusion. You should be unconscious. Maybe dead. Instead, you're sitting there having a conversation. So either you're not human, or I'm losing my mind. You're not losing your mind. Then what are you? Callum held her gaze, and Harper saw him making a decision. What if I told you there are things in this world that science hasn't explained? People who aren't entirely what they seem. I'd say you hit your head too hard during your attack. Would you? He leaned forward slightly. Then explain how I healed. Explain how I climbed your wall. Explain why your instincts are screaming that something about me is different. Harper wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. There was something fundamentally wrong about this situation. Something that didn't fit into her carefully organized worldview. She'd spent the night watching impossible wounds close themselves. She'd felt his fever-hot skin, his too-strong pulse. Normal didn't cover any of it. I heal fast, Callum continued when she didn't respond. It's genetic. A trait that runs in my family. That's not a genetic trait. That's superhuman. Is it? His silver eyes caught the morning light streaming through her window. Or is it just something you haven't encountered before? Harper's phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. She pulled it out one-handed, keeping the knife pointed at Callum. The client. The one with the impossible deadline. The message was terse, professional, and devastating. They'd found someone else. Someone more reliable. Someone who didn't miss deadlines. The knife lowered slightly as Harper read the words again. That was $6,000 she couldn't afford to lose. $6,000 toward her mother's treatment. Toward keeping their house. Toward surviving another month. Bad news? Callum asked quietly. None of your business. But her voice cracked on the words, betraying her. The client you were working for last night, they fired you. Harper's head snapped up. How do you know that? I heard you on the phone yesterday, before I arrived. You mentioned needing the job, needing the money for medical bills. His expression softened slightly. Your mother. She's sick. You were listening to my private conversations? I was bleeding on your floor. I heard what I heard. Callum shifted, testing his movement. I'm sorry you lost the work because of me. The apology surprised her. Harper had expected denial, deflection, not genuine remorse from a stranger who'd crashed into her life and turned it upside down. She lowered the knife completely, suddenly too exhausted to maintain the aggressive stance. What am I supposed to do with you? The question came out tired, defeated. I can't keep hiding you up here. My mother's already suspicious. And you can't stay forever. I'll be gone by tonight. I just need a few more hours to fully recover. Recover from what? Who attacked you? Why? That's complicated. Everything about you is complicated. Harper sank onto her desk chair. But I'm going to need better answers than it's complicated. If you want me to keep lying to my mother about the strange man in my room. Callum was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made Harper's skin prickle. There are things in this world your science books don't cover. Creatures that exist alongside humanity, hidden in plain sight. My enemies are part of that world. And last night they tried to remove me from it permanently. Creatures. Harper tested the word, found it absurd. You're telling me monsters are real? I'm telling you that your definition of normal is narrower than reality. That's insane. Is it? Callum met her eyes again, and this time she saw something shift in his gaze. The silver brightened, took on an almost luminous quality that had nothing to do with reflected light. Then how do you explain this? Harper stared, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to look away, to dismiss what she was seeing as a trick of exhaustion. But the evidence was undeniable. His eyes were glowing. Actually, genuinely glowing with an inner light that belonged in fantasy novels. Not her bedroom. What are you? The question came out as a whisper. Someone who shouldn't exist according to your worldview. The glow faded, leaving normal silver-gray eyes that somehow seemed less strange now. But I do exist. And so does the world I come from. Harper's practical mind warred with what her eyes had just witnessed. Impossible. It was impossible. But so was a man healing from mortal wounds in hours. So was the way he'd appeared in her window, defying logic and gravity. "I need to think," she said finally. "I need to process this without you staring at me with your impossible eyes." "I understand." Callum settled back against the wall. "Take your time. I'll be here." Harper fled downstairs, her thoughts a chaotic mess. In the kitchen, she braced herself against the counter and tried to breathe normally. Monsters. He'd essentially told her monsters were real, that he was something other than human, that the world contained secrets her carefully organized mind had never imagined. And the terrifying part? She believed him. Chapter 3. Unveiled Truths. The second day brought a shift Harper couldn't ignore. When she climbed the stairs with breakfast for Callum, he was standing by the window, examining the street below with an intensity that spoke of years spent watching for threats. The blanket she'd given him was folded neatly on her desk chair. The blood on her floor had dried to a dark stain she'd need to scrub later. He turned when she entered, moving with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for someone who'd been bleeding out 24 hours ago. The wounds she'd cleaned last night were barely visible now, faded to thin pink lines that looked weeks old rather than hours. "This is insane," Harper said, setting the plate down harder than necessary. "People don't heal this fast. It's not biologically possible. Your biology textbooks are incomplete." Callum gestured at the food. "Thank you for this. You didn't have to. I'm not letting you starve in my room. That would just create more problems." Harper crossed her arms, trying to maintain some semblance of control over a situation that had spiraled far beyond her understanding. "You said you'd explain. So explain. What are you?" Callum studied her face, seeming to measure how much truth she could handle. "Have you ever heard the term shapeshifter? Like werewolves?" Harper's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. "That's what you're going with? Werewolves are real?" "The term werewolf is technically accurate, though we prefer shifter. And yes, we're real. We've existed alongside humanity for thousands of years, hidden in plain sight." He spoke calmly, as if discussing the weather rather than upending her entire worldview. "We live in organized groups called packs. We have our own laws, our own social structures. A hidden society that most humans never know exists." Harper shook her head, searching for the logical explanation her mind desperately wanted. "You're in shock. Or you hit your head during the attack. There has to be a rational explanation for what I'm seeing. I can show you. If you're willing to accept what you see." "Show me what?" Callum moved closer, and Harper found herself backing against her desk. He wasn't threatening exactly, but his presence filled the room in a way that made her acutely aware of how much larger he was, how much stronger. "Watch," he said quietly. His eyes changed first. The silver brightened, took on that unnatural glow she'd glimpsed yesterday, but this time it was accompanied by other changes. His canines lengthened, becoming sharp points that should have belonged to an animal, not a man. The transformation was subtle, controlled, but undeniably real. Harper's hand found the desk edge, gripping it hard enough that her knuckles went white. "That's not possible. It's what I am." Callum's voice carried a slight roughness now, as if the changes affected his vocal cords. "We can shift between human and wolf form. In my case, I can also do this halfway shift. It's a sign of control, of age and experience. This is a trick. Special effects or contact lenses or something. Is it?" He opened his mouth slightly, showing her the elongated canines. "Touch them if you don't believe me." Harper didn't move. Couldn't move. Every rational thought she'd ever had was screaming that this was impossible, but the evidence stood right in front of her. Real. Solid. Undeniable. "I need to sit down," she managed. Callum's features shifted back to human normal, the glow fading from his eyes, the canines retracting. Within seconds, he looked perfectly ordinary again. "I understand this is difficult to process." Difficult. Harper sank into her chair, her legs suddenly unreliable. "My entire understanding of reality just collapsed. Difficult doesn't begin to cover it. I'm sorry. I wish there was a gentler way to show you. Are there others? Other shifters? Thousands, maybe more. We're scattered across the world, organized into packs based on territory. Each pack has an alpha who leads them, maintains order, settles disputes. Callum leaned against the wall, giving her space to breathe. We're not monsters, Harper. We're just different. We have families, jobs, normal lives. We're simply better at hiding what we are. Harper's mind raced through the implications. The attack last night. That was other shifters? Yes. A rival pack trying to eliminate me. Why would they target you specifically? Callum hesitated, and Harper saw him weighing how much to reveal. Because of my position. I hold a certain amount of authority in the shifter world. That makes me both powerful and vulnerable to those who want that power for themselves. A scream from downstairs shattered the moment. Harper was moving before conscious thought caught up, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Her mother's pain was a physical thing, filling the house with its intensity. She found Vivian curled on her bed, hands pressed to her abdomen, face contorted in agony. "Mom!" Harper dropped beside her, reaching for the medication on the nightstand. "Hang on. Let me get you something stronger. It's not working." Vivian's voice was thin, strained. The painkillers aren't working anymore. Harper heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Callum in the doorway. She should have told him to stay upstairs, to stay hidden. But desperation overrode caution. "Can you help her? You said shifters heal fast. Can you do something?" "I can try." Callum moved forward, his expression focused. "May I?" Vivian's eyes snapped open at his voice, and Harper watched her mother's face transform from pain to absolute terror. The kind of fear that went soul deep, instinctive and overwhelming. Pain flared, but truth, older than pain, clawed free. Secrets demanded air. "Alpha King," Vivian whispered, the words barely audible. "Here, how?" "Alpha King," Vivian whispered. The air itself seemed to bow. Power rolled off him in cold waves, an old blood signature only wolves could sense. Harper's confusion deepened. "Mom? What are you talking about?" But Vivian wasn't looking at her. She stared at Callum with recognition that made no sense. "Please, don't hurt my daughter. She doesn't know anything. She's innocent. I have no intention of hurting anyone." Callum's voice was gentle, but carried an undercurrent of authority that made Harper's spine straighten involuntarily. "You're in pain. I'd like to help if you'll allow it." "Mom." Harper grabbed her mother's hand, trying to understand what was happening. "How do you know what he is? How do you even know the term Alpha King?" Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Harper, sweetheart, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." The pain seemed to recede slightly, pushed back by the weight of what her mother needed to confess. Vivian sat up slowly, each movement careful, and looked at Harper with an expression of profound regret. "I'm a shifter," Vivian said simply. "Or I was. I haven't shifted in 28 years, but the blood is still there. The instincts. And I knew the moment he entered this house what he was. What kind of power he carries." Harper felt the world tilt again. "That's not possible. You're human. You're my mother. I've known you my entire life. You've known the version of me I chose to show you." Vivian's hand tightened around Harper's. "I was born into the Millbrook pack. I had a wolf, a full shifter identity, but when I was 20 years old, the Alpha tried to arrange a mating for me with his son. I refused. In our world, that refusal was seen as an insult, a rejection of pack hierarchy and tradition. So they kicked you out. They banished me, exiled me from all pack territories, marked me as rogue. I was supposed to live alone without community or support. But instead, I chose a different path." Vivian's voice softened. "I met your father a year later. He was human, kind, and completely unaware of the supernatural world. I fell in love with him, married him, and decided to suppress everything about my shifter nature to build a normal life." Harper pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. "My entire life has been a lie? No. My love for you, for your father, that was all real. But I hid my past to protect you. I used herbs to mask my scent, willpower to keep my wolf buried. I wanted you to have a normal childhood, free from the dangers and politics of the shifter world. And I didn't inherit any of it?" Harper's voice came out hollow. "I'm just human? It happens in about 30% of cases when a shifter mates with a human. The shifter genes don't pass on. Vivian looked at Callum, then back at Harper. I never told you, because I thought you'd be safer not knowing. That world is dangerous, Harper. People die over pack politics and territorial disputes. I wanted better for you. Callum had remained silent through the revelation, but now he spoke. Your secret is safe with me. I have no interest in reporting a banishment from nearly 3 decades ago. You're the Alpha King, Vivian said, her voice carrying respect and fear in equal measure. You could demand anything. You could force Harper into that world just by your presence here. I make my own choices, and I choose to respect the life you've built. Callum's silver eyes found Harper's. Your mother gave up everything to protect you. That's not something I take lightly. Harper's phone buzzed in her pocket, a jarring intrusion of normalcy into a moment that felt anything but normal. She pulled it out absently, then froze at the display. The screen showed dozens of missed calls and messages, all from numbers she didn't recognize. Callum's expression shifted, becoming alert and focused. May I see that? She handed him the phone, watching as he scrolled through messages too fast for her to read. His jaw clenched, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. What is it? Harper asked. My people have been trying to find me. They traced my location to this area. Started reaching out to any phone signals they could identify. Callum's fingers moved quickly, typing a response to one of the messages. The situation in my world has deteriorated. My enemies are claiming I'm dead, using my absence to seize territory and destabilize the balance of power. So you need to leave, within the next 2 to 3 days. I need to prove I'm alive, reassert my authority before everything I've built collapses. He looked at Harper, and she saw genuine regret in his expression. I'm sorry for bringing this chaos into your home. You saved yourself from dying. That's not chaos. That's survival. Harper rubbed her temples, trying to process the last 48 hours. Though I'd appreciate it if you could leave without bringing any more supernatural drama to my doorstep. A ghost of a smile touched Callum's lips. I'll do my best. Vivian had been watching them both, her expression unreadable. Now she spoke, her voice carrying a warning. Alpha King, my daughter has no wolf, no connection to your world. Please keep it that way. I will, Callum promised. But as his eyes met Harper's across the room, something passed between them, an awareness, a connection that felt far more significant than a simple promise could encompass. Harper broke the eye contact first, turning to help her mother back to bed. Behind her, she heard Callum leave the room, heard him climb the stairs back to her bedroom. But the awareness didn't fade. It lingered, a presence in her chest that felt both foreign and oddly right. 3 days. She had 3 days before he disappeared from her life forever. 3 days to return to normal, to pretend none of this had happened. But as Harper held her mother's hand and felt the weight of secrets finally revealed, she couldn't shake the feeling that normal was something she'd never find again. Chapter 4. Unspoken Bonds. The next 3 days blurred together in a way Harper couldn't have anticipated. Callum moved through her house with a quiet presence that should have felt intrusive, but somehow didn't. He was respectful of boundaries, helpful without being asked, and increasingly difficult to ignore. On the 3rd day, Harper found herself working at the kitchen table rather than hiding in her room. Callum sat across from her, reading a book he'd found on her shelf, occasionally glancing up to watch her work. The silence between them had shifted from uncomfortable to companionable, a change that unsettled her more than the initial tension. Tell me something, Harper said, not looking up from her laptop screen. If you're this Alpha King, why were you alone during the ambush? Don't leaders usually have guards or something? Callum's fingers paused on the page. I was meeting with potential allies. Discreetly. Taking a full security detail would have sent the wrong message. Unfortunately, it also made me vulnerable. So someone betrayed you. Someone always betrays you when there's power involved. The trick is figuring out who before they strike. His voice carried a weariness that spoke of experience. I've been dealing with challengers and traitors for a decade. You'd think I'd be better at spotting them by now. Harper finally looked at him, studying the tension in his shoulders. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's the life I inherited when my father died. Someone has to maintain order among the packs, settle territorial disputes, Prevent the kind of chaos that would expose us all to the human world. Do you ever regret it? The responsibility? Callum's silver eyes met hers with surprising honesty. Every day. But regret doesn't change reality. The position is mine until someone stronger takes it. Or death releases me. That's bleak. That's survival. He closed the book, giving her his full attention. What about you? Do you regret giving up your life to care for your mother? The question hit harder than Harper expected. She looked down at her laptop, at the half-finished design that would probably never see completion. Sometimes. Is that terrible to admit? It's honest. Caring for a dying parent is one of the hardest things a person can do. You're allowed to feel trapped by it. Harper's throat tightened. No one else had ever acknowledged the suffocating weight of her situation. Not friends who'd slowly drifted away, not relatives who offered empty platitudes instead of actual help. But this stranger, this impossible man from a hidden world, understood without judgment. I love her, Harper said quietly, but I'm 25, and my entire life is doctor appointments and medical bills. I can't plan for a future because I don't know if I'll have one. Every day could be the last good day, and that knowledge is crushing me. Callum reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent warmth through her skin, comforting and electrifying in equal measure. You're stronger than you think. Not many people could handle what you're carrying. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding on. That's what strength looks like sometimes. Not the absence of breaking, but choosing to keep going even when you're already broken. Harper found herself unable to look away from him. In the afternoon sunlight streaming through her kitchen window, Callum looked less like an otherworldly creature and more like just a man. A man who somehow saw her, really saw her, in a way no one else had. The moment shattered when Harper's phone buzzed with a reminder about her mother's evening medications. She pulled her hand away, breaking the connection that had felt far too significant. That night, around midnight, Vivian's screams tore through the house. Harper was moving before conscious thought caught up, taking the stairs in a rush that nearly sent her tumbling. She found her mother curled on the bed, hands pressed to her abdomen, face twisted with an agony that went beyond anything Harper had seen before. "Mom." Harper grabbed the pill bottles, her hands shaking as she tried to read labels. "Hang on. Let me get you something stronger. Already took them." Vivian's voice was barely recognizable, thin and strained. "Not working." "Nothing's working anymore, Harper." Footsteps behind her announced Callum's arrival. Harper didn't turn around, didn't have the energy to care about propriety when her mother was suffering. "Can you help? Please. There has to be something you can do. I can try." Callum moved forward, his presence commanding despite the gentleness in his voice. "Vivian, may I?" Harper's mother nodded, desperate for any relief. Callum knelt beside the bed, his hands hovering over Vivian's abdomen. "I know some techniques for pain management. Pressure points that can sometimes interrupt the pain signals. But with your wolf so deeply suppressed, I'm not sure how effective it will be." He worked carefully, his fingers pressing specific points along Vivian's sides and back. Harper watched, hope and skepticism warring in her chest. For a few minutes, nothing seemed to change. Then Vivian's breathing steadied slightly, the rigid tension in her muscles easing by increments. "Is it helping?" Harper asked. "A little." Vivian's voice was still strained. But not enough. Harper grabbed her mother's hand without thinking, holding tight. "I'm here, Mom. I'm not going anywhere. Just focus on breathing." The change was subtle. So subtle Harper almost missed it. But Vivian's grip loosened slightly, her breathing deepening. The lines of pain etched into her face smoothed just a fraction, and her eyes fluttered closed as exhaustion pulled her toward sleep. "That's better," Vivian murmured. "Having you here, it helps." Harper exchanged a glance with Callum, who was studying them both with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Of course it does. That's what family is for." They stayed like that until Vivian fell into restless sleep. Harper carefully extracted her hand, following Callum back to the hallway. Her legs felt unsteady, adrenaline fading to leave her hollow and shaking. "Thank you," Harper said, "for trying to help. I wish I could have done more." Callum reached up, his thumb brushing away a tear Harper hadn't realized had fallen. She's lucky to have you." The touch lingered, his hand cupping her cheek with a tenderness that made Harper's heart stutter. They were close, closer than appropriate, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. His silver eyes held hers, and in them, she saw a reflection of her own confusing tangle of emotions. "Callum," she whispered, though she didn't know what she was asking for. He leaned closer, and Harper's eyes drifted closed, anticipation thrumming through her veins. But before their lips could meet, a sound from Vivian's room made them both freeze. Her mother, calling out in sleep, disoriented and afraid. Harper pulled back, reality crashing down. "I should check on her." "Of course." Callum stepped away, putting appropriate distance between them. "Good night, Harper." She watched him climb the stairs to her room, then returned to her mother's bedside. But even as she sat in the chair she'd pulled close to Vivian's bed, even as she tried to focus on monitoring her mother's breathing, Harper's mind kept returning to that almost kiss, and what it might have meant. The 5th day brought Griffin. Harper heard the knock first, unfamiliar and authoritative. When she opened the door, a massive man stood on her porch, his scarred face professional and assessing. "I'm looking for Callum Draven. I believe he's here." Callum appeared behind her before she could respond. "Griffin. About time." The two men clasped forearms in a gesture that spoke of years of trust. Griffin's eyes, dark and sharp, studied Harper with open curiosity. "So this is where you've been hiding. Recovering, not hiding." Callum gestured them inside. "What's the situation?" "Deteriorating rapidly. Victor has consolidated 3 smaller packs under his banner, claiming your death left a power vacuum. The council is demanding proof of life and your immediate return. They're talking about declaring you unfit and calling for a new Alpha King election." Harper watched Callum's expression harden, the relaxed man she'd come to know disappearing behind a mask of authority. "How long do I have?" "You needed to be back yesterday. But I can buy you maybe another day if you leave tonight." "Tonight." The word fell heavy between them. Harper felt something twist in her chest. She'd known he would leave. Known it from the beginning. But hearing the timeline made it real in a way that hurt more than it should. Griffin's attention shifted to her, then back to Callum, his expression sharpening. "You're different. More settled. What happened here?" "That's not your concern." "The hell it isn't. You're my Alpha King. Everything about you is my concern." Griffin crossed his arms. "She's human, Callum. Tell me you haven't—" "Not here." Callum's voice carried command that made even Harper's spine straighten. "We'll discuss this outside." They stepped onto the porch, and Harper definitely wasn't trying to eavesdrop from the kitchen window. Definitely not. But sound carried, especially when Griffin's voice rose with frustration. "A human mate? Are you insane? The council will never accept it. The Pax will see it as weakness." "I don't care what they see." Callum's reply was quieter, but no less intense. "She's mine. I felt the bond the moment I woke in her house. She doesn't even have a wolf. How can there be a mate bond with someone who's essentially human? I don't know. But it's there. I can feel her, Griffin. Her emotions, her presence. It's faint, undeveloped, but it's real." Harper's hand pressed against her chest, where something unfamiliar had been growing for days. A awareness of Callum that went beyond physical attraction. A sense of where he was, even when she couldn't see him. She'd attributed it to hypervigilance, to the strangeness of having a stranger in her house. But what if it was something more? The conversation outside continued, Griffin's objections giving way to resigned acceptance. When they came back inside, Callum's expression was set with determination. "I need to leave tonight," he told Harper. "But I'll come back. I promise you that." "You don't owe me promises." Harper forced her voice steady. "You saved yourself. You owe me nothing." "That's not true." Callum moved closer, and Harper found herself unable to step back. "You saved my life. You gave me sanctuary when you had every reason to turn me away. That's a debt I can never fully repay. I don't want repayment, I just want—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "What do you want, Harper?" Truth was easier than lies. "I don't know. But I don't want this to be goodbye forever." Callum's hand cupped her face, his touch gentle despite the barely restrained intensity in his eyes. "Then it won't be." He kissed her, and Harper's world narrowed to the press of his lips, the warmth of his body, the overwhelming rightness of the moment. This wasn't the tentative almost kiss from before. This was claim and promise and desperate need all tangled together. When they finally separated, both breathless, Callum pressed his forehead against hers. "I'll handle things in my world. Then I'm coming back for you. Nothing will stop me. People around you get hurt. You said so yourself. Then I'll make sure you're protected. Griffin will monitor the area. If anything seems wrong, anything at all, call this number." He pressed a phone into her hand. "Promise me." "I promise." That evening, Harper stood on her porch and watched Callum disappear into the gathering darkness. Vivian appeared beside her, wrapped in a blanket against the cool night air. "You care about him," Vivian observed. "I barely know him. Sometimes the most important connections happen fast." Her mother's hand found Harper's shoulder. "He called you his mate. Do you understand what that means?" He tried to explain. Something about a connection between shifters. Vivian's expression grew serious. Mate bonds are rare and powerful. They're soul-deep connections that go beyond choice or reason. When a shifter finds their true mate, the bond is undeniable, permanent, irrevocable. Harper's hand tightened on the phone Callum had given her. "But I'm human. How can that work?" "I don't know, but if the Alpha King says you're his mate, then something extraordinary is happening. Something that might change both your worlds forever." Inside, the house felt emptier than it had in days. Harper climbed to her room, where evidence of Callum's presence lingered in the neatly folded blanket, the book still marked at the page he'd been reading. She lay on her bed and tried to convince herself that life would return to normal now. But normal felt like a memory from someone else's life, and the awareness in her chest that seemed to point toward wherever Callum had gone suggested nothing would ever be normal again. Chapter 5. Awakening. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. 10 days after he left, 6 days under the same roof, then 4 of silence. Time had stopped making sense. Harper told herself she was fine, that life had returned to normal, that the 6 days with Callum had been an aberration she could forget. She went through the motions. Breakfast for Vivian, medications organized by time and dosage, sitting at her laptop, pretending to work while her mind drifted to silver eyes and impossible promises. The client rejections piled up. 3 in the first week, each one citing concerns about reliability or availability. Word spread fast in the freelance community. Harper Bennett wasn't dependable anymore. Better to find someone else. By day 10, she was scrambling. The mortgage payment loomed. The medical bills multiplied faster than she could track them. Her bank account hemorrhaged money for treatments that only bought time, never actual hope. "You look exhausted," Vivian said one afternoon, watching Harper stare blankly at her screen. "When did you last sleep a full night?" "I'm fine, Mom. You're obsessing over him. The Alpha King." Harper's fingers stilled on the keyboard. She'd been careful not to mention Callum, to pretend those days hadn't fundamentally altered something inside her. "I'm not obsessing. You check your phone every 5 minutes. You stare at nothing with this expression like you've lost something precious." Vivian's voice was gentle but knowing. "He got under your skin, didn't he?" Harper couldn't deny it. The awareness in her chest hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. A constant pull toward something she couldn't see or touch. She felt Callum's absence like a physical ache, which made no sense for someone she'd known less than a week. Late one night, unable to sleep, Harper did something she'd been avoiding. She searched his name online. The results were overwhelming. Photos of Callum at formal gatherings, surrounded by people who looked at him with respect bordering on worship. Articles in niche publications about territorial agreements and pack politics. A formal biography that listed him as the youngest Alpha King in recorded history, having assumed the position at 22 after his father's death. He wasn't just important. He was the equivalent of royalty in a world she'd never known existed. Harper stared at a photo of him in formal attire, standing before what looked like a council of severe-faced men and women. His expression was cold, authoritative, nothing like the man who'd sat at her kitchen table and understood her loneliness without judgment. "I'm an idiot," she whispered to the empty room. "He's basically royalty. and I'm a broke freelancer taking care of her dying mother. What did I think was going to happen? But the pull in her chest didn't care about logic or social hierarchy. It simply existed, insistent and undeniable. On day 10, Vivian called Harper into her room with a seriousness that made Harper's stomach clench. Her mother sat on the edge of her bed, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I need to tell you something," Vivian said. "Something I should have been honest about from the beginning." Harper sat beside her, dread pooling. "What is it? When I told you that you didn't inherit shifter genes, that you were just human, I wasn't being completely truthful." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Your father had distant shifter ancestry. His great-grandfather was a shifter, but the genes became dormant over generations. Your father never shifted, never even knew about that part of his heritage." The words took a moment to process. "So I might have shifter blood? Latent genes, so deeply buried that under normal circumstances, they'd never manifest. You'd live your entire life as human and never know the potential was there." Vivian gripped Harper's hand. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to give you false hope. The chance of those genes awakening is infinitesimally small, but there is a chance, only with an incredibly powerful trigger, something that would shake your biology to its core and force what's dormant to surface." Vivian's expression grew knowing. "Something like a true mate bond." Harper's heart hammered. "You think Callum and I have a mate bond? I think the Alpha King wouldn't have looked at you the way he did if he didn't feel it. And I think the way you've been these past 2 weeks suggests you might feel it too, even without understanding what it is." The pull in her chest suddenly made terrifying sense. Not just attraction or longing, but something biological, supernatural, irrevocable. "What does that mean for me?" Harper asked. "I don't know. This is unprecedented. A human with dormant genes bonding with the Alpha King himself?" Vivian shook her head. "But if the bond is strong enough, it might awaken your wolf. Might give you abilities you never had before." Harper wanted to ask more, to understand the implications, but her mother's exhaustion was visible, her body weakening despite all the treatments. The conversation could wait. 4 days later, everything changed. Harper was working at her desk at 11 p.m., trying to salvage a relationship with a potential client, when the emergency phone Callum had left rang. Not a normal ring. An urgent, pulsing alarm that made her heart stop. She grabbed it. "Hello? Harper, it's Griffin. Listen very carefully. Victor's people have found you. They're coming now. You need to get your mother and get out of the house immediately." Ice flooded her veins. "What? How did they find us?" "No time. I'm 15 minutes away." "Run! Now!" Harper was moving before conscious thought caught up. She grabbed her laptop and hard drive, shoved them in her bag. Her mother. She needed to get Vivian. She was halfway down the stairs when glass shattered. 4 men poured through the back door, moving with inhuman speed. Their eyes glowed amber in the darkness, and Harper knew with sick certainty that these were shifters. Victor's shifters. "Mom!" Harper screamed, changing direction toward Vivian's room. The lead shifter reached her first, his hand closing around her arm with crushing strength. "The Alpha King's little human pet. Victor will be pleased." Harper tried to pull away, panic overwhelming rational thought. "Let go of me. He wants you alive. That's all that matters." The shifter hauled her backward, away from her mother's room. Vivian's door burst open. Her mother stood there, weakened by illness, but fury blazing in her eyes. "Let my daughter go. Mom, run!" Harper struggled harder, but the shifter's grip was iron. Then Griffin crashed through the front door in full wolf form, a massive gray beast that slammed into the nearest attacker with bone-breaking force. The room erupted into chaos. Snarling, fighting, the sounds of bodies colliding. The shifter holding Harper dragged her toward the broken back door. She could see 2 more shifters overwhelming Griffin despite his size and skill. They'd planned this. Coordinated. Used some kind of masking that had hidden their approach. Terror gave way to rage. Her mother was in danger. Griffin was outnumbered. And she was being taken to someone who wanted to use her against Callum. No. The word echoed through her mind with such force that something inside her cracked. Not broke. Cracked open. like a shell that had been holding something back her entire life. Heat exploded through Harper's veins, searing and agonizing. Her bones felt like they were breaking and reforming. Her muscles burned as if acid had been poured through them. She opened her mouth to scream, but the sound that emerged was half human, half animal. The shifter holding her jerked back. What the? Harper's vision sharpened, colors becoming impossibly vivid. Scents flooded her senses, overwhelming and distinct. And when she raised her hands, they weren't entirely human anymore. Claws had emerged from her fingernails, sharp and deadly. Her canines had lengthened, and her eyes, she could feel her eyes burning with an inner light. She raked her claws across the shifter's face. He roared, stumbling back, blood streaming. "She's shifting! Intel said she was human!" The distraction was all Griffin needed. He surged upward, throwing off his attackers, his jaws closing on one shifter's shoulder. The injured man screamed. Harper collapsed, the partial shift reversing as painfully as it had come. Her bones ached, her muscles trembled, but she was free. Griffin forced the shifters back toward the broken door, his growls making even trained fighters hesitate. "Leave now, or die here." They went, dragging their injured with them, disappearing into the night. The house fell silent, except for Harper's ragged breathing. She was on her hands and knees shaking, unable to fully process what had just happened. Griffin shifted back to human form, immediately moving to check on her. "Are you hurt? Did they inject you with anything?" I shifted. Harper's voice didn't sound like her own. "How did I shift? I'm not supposed to be able to—" A howl split the night, close and getting closer. Harper's head snapped up, and the awareness in her chest exploded into something overwhelming. She knew that presence, knew it bone deep. Callum burst through the door in wolf form, black fur and silver eyes wild with urgency. He shifted mid-stride, reaching Harper in 3 steps and pulling her into his arms. "I felt you," he gasped against her hair. "I felt your fear, your pain. Through the bond. I've never moved so fast in my life." Harper buried her face in his chest, the trembling finally giving way to sobs. "They came for us. They wanted to take me to Victor." I know. Callum's hand cradled the back of her head, his other arm wrapped around her waist. "You're safe now. I've got you." Vivian appeared in the hallway, her face pale but determined. "Alpha King. They knew we were here. Someone told them. I'll find out who, and they'll pay for this." Callum's voice carried a darkness that made Harper shiver. Then his tone gentled as he pulled back to look at her face. "You shifted. Griffin said you partially shifted. I don't understand how. I've never been able to before." "The mate bond," Vivian said quietly. "It triggered her awakening, just as I feared it might." Callum's expression shifted to wonder. "Your wolf woke up. To protect yourself. To protect your mother." Harper looked around at the destruction. Broken windows, shattered furniture, bloodstains on her floor. The house where she'd grown up. Now a crime scene. "I can't stay here, and I can't afford to fix this. The insurance won't cover supernatural attacks, and I'm already drowning in debt." The adjuster called it vandalism with unknown instruments and denied the claim in under an hour. "You're not staying here." Callum's voice was firm. "Both of you are coming with me, to my territory, where I can protect you properly. Your world almost got us killed tonight. Victor targeted you because of me. That makes you my responsibility." His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Please, Harper, let me keep you safe." Harper looked at her mother, who was trembling despite her brave face, looked at the destruction around them, thought about the money she didn't have and the danger that clearly wasn't going away. "Okay," she whispered, "but Mom comes too. That's non-negotiable. I wouldn't have it any other way." Callum pressed a kiss to her forehead, relief evident in every line of his body. "Pack what you need. We leave within the hour." As dawn broke over Seattle, Harper sat in the back of Griffin's car, her mother beside her, watching her childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. Callum followed in his own vehicle, and even from this distance, Harper could feel him through the bond that now made undeniable sense. Her wolf stirred inside her, still weak, still new, but awake. Finally, impossibly awake. And Harper Bennett, who had spent 25 years believing she was ordinary, was heading toward a world where nothing would ever be ordinary again. Chapter 6. The claiming Callum's territory was nothing like Harper had imagined. No ancient castle or medieval stronghold. Instead, a sprawling modern compound rose from forested hills, all clean lines and contemporary architecture, security checkpoints, high-tech surveillance, dozens of people moving with purpose through landscaped grounds. "This is where the Alpha King lives?" Harper asked as Griffin's car passed through the main gate. "This is where I work," Callum corrected from the vehicle behind them, his voice coming through the phone she still held. "It's part residence, part government center. Welcome to the heart of shifter politics." The guest wing where they settled Harper and Vivian was luxurious in a way that made Harper acutely uncomfortable. Separate bedrooms connected by a shared living space, furniture that probably cost more than her car, windows overlooking forests that stretched to the horizon. Vivian sank onto the bed in her room, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "This is a mistake, Harper. Bringing me here. I'm banished. The other shifters will remember. Callum said you're under his protection. And how long will that last when the council questions his judgment?" Vivian's eyes were haunted. "I've seen what happens to shifters who defy pack law. It never ends well." Harper wanted to argue, to offer reassurance. But footsteps in the hallway made them both tense. Through the open door, Harper saw several shifters pass by, their conversation stopping abruptly when they noticed her. She caught whispers. The human, Alpha King's pet, banished female from Millbrook. The hostility was palpable. That evening, Callum came to their rooms, his expression grim. "The council has called an emergency session. They want to question my decision to bring you both here." "I told you this would happen," Vivian said. "And I told you I don't care what they think." Callum's silver eyes found Harper's. "But I won't lie to you. The next few days will be difficult. Victor is using this as ammunition to challenge my authority." "Challenge how?" Harper asked. "Formal combat. To the death. Winner becomes Alpha King." Callum's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather rather than a fight that could kill him. "It's his legal right under our laws." Harper's stomach dropped. "When?" 3 days. Full moon. Neutral ground. Shifter rights treat the full moon as a 3-night window. Tonight was the heart of it. 3 days. She had 3 days before Callum faced someone who wanted him dead, and there was nothing she could do to help. The next morning, Griffin appeared at their door. "Training time. If you're going to be in this world, you need to control your shift." The training ground was a cleared area behind the main compound, surrounded by forest. Griffin was patient but demanding, pushing Harper to access the wolf she'd awakened during the attack. "Feel it," he instructed. "Your wolf is there, waiting. You just need to invite it forward." Harper closed her eyes, reaching for that presence she'd felt during the terror of Victor's ambush. It stirred, responding to her call. Her vision sharpened. Sense flooded her senses. And when she opened her eyes, she knew they were glowing golden. Claws emerged from her fingernails. Canines lengthened. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't achieve a full wolf form. The shift stopped at partial, leaving her stuck between human and animal. "It's frustrating," Harper admitted after an hour of failed attempts. "It's progress," Griffin countered. "Most people with dormant genes never shift at all. You're doing better than you think." During a water break, Griffin accidentally cut his hand on a piece of broken equipment. Without thinking, Harper reached for him. "Let me see." The moment her fingers touched his wound, warmth flooded through her palms. Golden light emanated from her hands, and Griffin's eyes widened as the cut sealed itself, healing in seconds. "What the hell was that?" Harper stared at her hands, which still glowed faintly. "I don't know. I just felt like I could help, so I did." "You're a healer." Griffin's voice carried awe. "That's incredibly rare, Harper. Even among full-blooded shifters. They tested it on Vivian that afternoon." Harper's touch eased her mother's constant pain. The cancer that had been advancing relentlessly suddenly checked, not cured. Harper could feel that the disease was too entrenched for complete healing, but managed, controlled. "This changes things." Callum said when Harper showed him. Healers are valued in our world. The council will have to recognize your worth now. I don't want to be valued for what I can do, Harper said quietly. I want to be valued for who I am. Callum pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. I value both. Every part of you. 2 days before the challenge, Harper discovered the traitor by accident. She'd been practicing her healing ability, trying to understand its limits, when Owen, one of Callum's senior enforcers, offered to help test it. Harper touched his shoulder to assess him, and darkness flooded her senses. Deception. Malice. Betrayal. She jerked back. There's something wrong with you. Owen's expression shifted from friendly to cold in an instant. You can sense it? I didn't think human healers could detect corruption. What have you done? Harper backed away, but Owen moved faster. His hand closed around her throat, lifting her off the ground. I've been feeding information to Victor for months, setting up the ambush that should have killed Callum, ensuring the Alpha King's downfall. Owen's grip tightened. And now you're going to die before you can tell anyone. Harper clawed at his hand, her partial shift activating from pure survival instinct. Her newly formed claws raked across Owen's face, making him roar and drop her. Griffin appeared from nowhere, tackling Owen with the full force of his considerable weight. They crashed through equipment, snarling and fighting with brutal efficiency. Callum arrived seconds later, his power filling the training ground like a physical presence. Owen. The single word carried absolute authority. Explain yourself. Victor offered me more than you ever could. Real power. Not this pretense of civilization. Owen spat blood. You're weak, Callum. Choosing a human mate over pack strength. I'm not the only one who thinks so. Who else? Callum's voice dropped to something dangerous. Owen smiled, showing bloodied teeth. Find out yourself. He moved before anyone could stop him, shifting mid-stride and running for the compound's perimeter. Griffin gave chase, but Owen knew the territory too well. He escaped through a maintenance access point, disappearing into the forest. Security welded the maintenance breach shut by dusk. Access keys were rotated, and 3 handlers were quietly suspended pending inquiry. We've been investigating the leak for weeks, Callum told Harper afterward, his jaw tight with fury. You found him in minutes. Your healing sense detected what we couldn't. What does this mean for the challenge? It means Victor knows we're onto him. He'll move the timeline up. Callum's phone buzzed. He read the message and his expression darkened. He just did. The challenge is tomorrow at dawn, not in 2 days. Harper's world tilted. Tomorrow? You're not ready. I'll have to be. Callum cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. But there's something I need to explain first. About mate bonds and what happens if I don't survive this. He led her to his private quarters, away from listening ears. Without a claiming ceremony, our bond isn't recognized by shifter law. If I die tomorrow, you'd have no protection. No standing in this world. Victor could claim you himself under ancient laws regarding unmated potential mates. That's barbaric. That's our law. Callum's silver eyes held hers intently. A claiming ceremony makes the bond permanent and legally binding. Blood exchange. Formal vows. A claiming bite that marks you as mine and me as yours. Once completed, no one can challenge it. Harper's heart hammered. Permanent. As in forever? As in there's no going back. No divorce or separation. When shifters claim their mates, it's for life. He took her hands. I won't pressure you, Harper. This has to be your choice. But I want you to know what you mean to me. What you've become to me. We've known each other less than 3 weeks. I felt the bond since the moment I woke in your house. Time doesn't change what's already there. His voice roughened with emotion. You're mine, Harper Bennett. You've been mine since the night you saved my life, and I've been yours since I opened my eyes and saw you watching over me. Harper thought about the awareness in her chest that pointed toward him always. The way her wolf responded to his presence. The rightness she felt when he touched her. If you do this tomorrow, she said slowly, if you face Victor and I lose you, I'll never forgive myself for not claiming you when I had the chance. Then don't lose that chance. Callum's forehead pressed against hers. Be mine, officially, completely, tonight. Yes. The word felt like inevitability. Tonight. Under the moon. The ceremony happened at midnight in a clearing on the compound grounds. Only Griffin and Vivian attended as witnesses. The intimacy of the moment too precious for crowds. Callum had changed into traditional garb, all dark leather and ritualistic markings. Harper wore a simple white dress Vivian had somehow procured. The moon rode near full and bright enough to silver the clearing, painting everything silver. "Ready?" Callum asked. Harper nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. They faced each other in the moonlight. Callum took a small blade, making a shallow cut across his palm, then did the same to hers. Their hands clasped together, blood mingling, and Harper gasped as the bond between them flared to life with overwhelming intensity. "I claim you," Callum said, his voice carrying the weight of ancient ritual. "As my mate, my Luna, my heart. I pledge my strength to protect you, my life to defend you, my soul to love you until death releases me." Harper's voice shook but held steady. "I claim you. As my mate, my alpha, my heart. I pledge my strength to support you, my life to stand with you, my soul to love you until death releases me." The bond pulsed between them, golden and unbreakable. Harper could feel Callum's emotions flooding through. Love, fierce protective instinct, desire that made her skin flush hot. Then Callum's lips found the junction of her neck and shoulder, and his teeth sank deep in a claiming bite that should have hurt, but instead sent pleasure cascading through her entire body. She cried out, her hands clutching his shoulders, as the bond completed with an intensity that stole her breath. When she could think again, Harper took the blade and made her own mark on his neck. Her partially shifted canines weren't as strong as his, but intent mattered more than power. Callum groaned, his arms tightening around her. "Mine," she whispered against his skin. "Yours," he agreed. "Always yours." They consummated the bond in his quarters, and Harper discovered that physical intimacy with a mate bond was overwhelming in ways she couldn't have imagined. Every touch magnified, every sensation shared between them. When they finally lay tangled together, both breathless and satisfied, the claiming mark on her neck throbbed with a pleasant warmth. "I can feel you," Harper whispered. "Your emotions, your presence. It's like you're part of me now. We're part of each other." Callum traced the mark he'd left. "Forever, Harper. There's no undoing this. I don't want to undo it." She kissed him softly. "I want you to survive tomorrow so we can have a lifetime of this. Then I'll survive, because I'm not leaving my mate alone in this world." But as dawn approached and Callum prepared for battle, Harper couldn't shake the fear that tomorrow might steal everything they'd just claimed. Chapter 7. Blood Under Moonlight. Dawn broke cold and unforgiving over the neutral clearing where shifter law would be satisfied in blood. Harper stood with Vivian and Griffin in the designated spectator area. Her hands clenched so tightly her nails drew blood from her palms. The claiming mark on her neck throbbed with every beat of her heart, pulsing in rhythm with Callum's presence somewhere in the forest preparing for battle. Dozens of alphas had gathered as witnesses, their faces carved from stone, expressions revealing nothing. This was tradition. This was law. Personal feelings had no place in a challenge that would determine who ruled them all. "You can't interfere," Griffin reminded her quietly, "no matter what happens. If you try to help him during the fight, they'll disqualify Callum and declare Victor the winner by default. I know the rules." Harper's voice came out sharper than intended. Through the bond, she could feel Callum's focused determination, his warrior's calm settling over him like armor. But underneath that calm lurked the knowledge that one of them wouldn't leave this clearing alive. Victor emerged from the eastern tree line first, his platinum hair catching the early light. He was massive in human form, all corded muscle and brutal efficiency. Scars marked his exposed arms and chest, each one a testament to battles survived. His amber eyes found Harper, and he smiled with cruel satisfaction. "The prize awaits," he called across the clearing. "I'll enjoy claiming what should have been mine, little human." Harper's wolf stirred, responding to the threat with a growl that rumbled in her chest. Her eyes flashed golden before she could suppress it, making several nearby alphas shift uncomfortably. Then Callum appeared, and Harper's breath caught. He moved with lethal grace, every line of his body speaking of controlled violence. His silver eyes swept the clearing, found her, and softened for just a moment. Through their bond, she felt his love crash over her like a wave, fierce and all-consuming. "I love you," she mouthed, knowing he'd see it even from this distance. His lips curved in the ghost of a smile. Then his expression went cold as he turned to face Victor. An elderly alpha stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The challenge is witnessed. Combat will continue until one challenger yields or dies. The victor assumes the title of Alpha King and all territories sworn to it. Let no one interfere or face execution for breaking our most sacred law." Harper's stomach twisted. Execution. They would kill her if she tried to help. "Begin," the elder commanded. Both men shifted simultaneously. Callum's transformation was fluid, powerful, becoming a massive black wolf with eyes that gleamed silver in the dawn light. Victor's shift was equally impressive, his platinum fur reflecting the sun as he took wolf form, slightly smaller than Callum, but visibly more scarred, more experienced in survival. They circled each other, assessing, calculating. Then Victor struck first, launching himself with brutal speed. Callum met him midair, and the sound of their collision made Harper flinch. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of fangs and claws, snarling with primal fury. Blood spattered the grass within seconds. Harper felt every blow through the bond. When Victor's teeth found Callum's shoulder, pain exploded in her own shoulder, making her gasp. Vivian's hand found hers, squeezing tight. "He's strong," her mother whispered. "He'll survive this." But as minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity, Harper wasn't so sure. Victor fought with the desperation of someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. He used the terrain, throwing Callum into trees, rocks, anything that could cause additional damage. His tactics were vicious, targeting joints and vulnerable areas with surgical precision. Callum fought back with equal ferocity, his larger size giving him advantage in raw power. But Victor was faster, more agile, dodging killing blows and landing countless smaller wounds that accumulated like interest on a debt. 20 minutes into the fight, both wolves were bleeding heavily. Harper tasted copper in her mouth, her own body reflecting Callum's injuries through their connection. She wanted to look away, to spare herself the agony of watching, but she forced her eyes to stay open. If Callum could endure this, she could endure witnessing it. Victor seized an opening, his jaws closing around Callum's hind leg. The bones snapped with a sound that made several witnesses wince. Callum went down, and Victor pressed his advantage, driving his opponent into the ground with overwhelming force. Through the bond, Harper felt Callum's determination waver, felt exhaustion creeping in, felt the calculation that maybe surrender would be better than death. "No," Harper breathed. "Don't give up. Please don't give up." Victor went for Callum's throat, jaws opening wide for the killing strike. Time seemed to slow as Harper watched death approach the man she'd claimed just hours ago. The bond between them flared with desperate intensity, as if trying to bridge the distance separating them. And Harper reached. Not physically, not with her hands or her voice, but with everything she was, everything the bond had made her. She reached through that golden connection and poured healing energy into Callum with the same instinct that had saved Griffin's hand, that had eased her mother's pain. The effect was immediate and unprecedented. Golden light erupted from Callum's body, visible even in wolf form. His broken leg straightened. Deep wounds sealed themselves. Energy flooded back into exhausted muscles. And when Victor's teeth closed on Callum's throat, they found only fur and skin too tough to penetrate. The witnesses erupted in shocked murmurs. Several alphas stood, staring at the impossible display. Harper sagged against Griffin, the effort of channeling healing across distance, leaving her drained but determined. She kept the connection open, kept the energy flowing. Callum surged upward with renewed strength, throwing Victor off. The tables had turned. Now Callum pressed the advantage, his attacks calculated and devastating. He'd been conserving energy, Harper realized, waiting for this moment. Victor tried to retreat, to recalibrate his strategy, but Callum gave him no chance. The next exchange was brief and brutal. Callum's jaws found Victor's throat and didn't let go. They went down together, Victor thrashing, Callum holding with iron determination. The Platinum Wolf's movements slowed, weakened, finally stopped. Callum released his grip, stepping back as Victor's body went limp. The challenge was over. Blood stained the grass, turned the dawnlight crimson, and Callum Draven stood victorious, his silver eyes finding Harper across the clearing as he shifted back to human form. "The Alpha King prevails," the Elder announced. "Let all witnesses acknowledge Callum Draven's right to rule." The Alphas present dropped to one knee in acknowledgement. Even those who'd supported Victor understood that law was law. Challenge was challenge. The matter was settled in the oldest way their kind knew. Harper broke from Griffin's restraining hand the moment the formal acknowledgement concluded, running across the clearing to where Callum stood. He caught her, pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "You saved me," he whispered. "I felt you. The healing. How is that even possible? I don't know. I just couldn't let you die." Harper pulled back to examine him, her hands running over skin that should have been torn and broken, but showed only faint bruising. "Are you really okay?" "Better than okay. Because I have you." Callum kissed her, not caring about the witnesses, the blood, the formality of the moment. "My mate, my Luna, mine." The golden light from Harper's healing still faded from visibility as they held each other, and several alphas approached with expressions of stunned respect. "The mate bond demonstrated unprecedented power," one of them said. "Remote healing through connection alone. This has never been documented in our history. The law forbids outside help," the Elder said at last. "But a mate bond's emanation is judged part of the challenger himself. No violation stands." "Then document it now," Callum replied, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Harper Bennett is my officially claimed mate and your Luna. Her abilities have saved your Alpha King's life. Anyone who questions her worth questions me directly." The challenge in his words was clear. No one took it up. In the days that followed, the shifter world settled into new patterns. Victor's supporters either swore loyalty to Callum or quietly retreated to their own territories. The threat of civil war evaporated with Victor's death, leaving peace in its wake. 2 councils, 3 sworn oaths, and a dozen border guarantees later, the map held steady. Peace, this time, felt earned rather than declared. Griffin's team found Owen trying to cross the southern border 12 hours after the challenge. The traitor had been exhausted, alone, his confidence shattered by Victor's defeat. His trial was swift, his exile permanent. Mercy instead of execution, which several alphas had advocated for. He made his choices, Callum had said during the sentencing. Let him live with the consequences somewhere far from here. Vivian's formal pardon came 3 days later. Callum had negotiated with the current alpha of Millbrook Pack, who turned out to be the grandson of the alpha who'd banished her. The younger leader had no interest in ancient grudges, especially when the Alpha King himself was advocating for mercy. "You're free," Harper told her mother as they walked through the compound gardens. Officially recognized as a member of Callum's pack. No more hiding. Vivian touched the claiming mark on her daughter's neck, still visible and thrumming with barely contained power. "And you're officially Luna, the mate of the most powerful shifter in the territory. How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Overwhelming." "Right," Harper smiled. All of those at once. 2 weeks after the challenge, Harper found herself in a formal ceremony she couldn't quite believe was real. The Council of Alphas gathered to officially recognize her as Luna, acknowledging both the mate bond and her unprecedented healing abilities. She wore traditional garb, white and gold, with the claiming mark prominently displayed. Callum stood beside her in his formal regalia, every inch the Alpha King. When the elderly Alpha who'd overseen the challenge placed a silver circlet on her head, Harper felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. "Luna Harper," the Elder intoned, "may your strength guide our Alpha King. May your healing touch bring wellness to our people. May your bond remind us all of what true partnership can accomplish." The gathered alphas echoed the blessing, and for the first time since crawling through her bedroom window, Harper felt like she might actually belong in this impossible world. Vivian's health improved steadily under Harper's care. The cancer wasn't cured, would never be fully cured, but it was managed, controlled. The doctors at the compound's medical facility were stunned by the remission, by the way Vivian's body responded to the combination of Harper's healing and their advanced treatments. "You've given me time," Vivian said one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "Maybe years. That's more than I dared hope for." "You gave me life," Harper replied. "This is just repaying the debt." 3 months after the night that changed everything, Harper stood at the window of the quarters she now shared with Callum, looking out over the territory that had become her home. Behind her, Callum wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "Regrets?" he asked softly. Harper thought about her destroyed house in Seattle, her lost freelance career, the normal life she'd been living just months ago. Then she felt the bond humming between them, felt her wolf stirring contentedly, remembered the respect in the council's eyes during her Luna ceremony. "None," she said honestly. "Not a single one." "Good, because I'm never letting you go." Callum's lips found the claiming mark, making her shiver with pleasure. "You're mine forever, remember? And you're mine." Harper turned in his arms, seeing the man who'd crashed through her window and into her carefully controlled life. "Forever works for me." Outside, the full moon rose over the compound, bathing everything in silver light, and Harper Bennett, who'd started as a struggling human caring for her dying mother, stood in the arms of the Alpha King and knew that sometimes the best destinies were the ones you never saw coming. Chapter 8. Home. 3 months had transformed everything. Harper stood in the compound's healing center, her hands glowing golden as she eased the pain from a young shifter who'd broken his arm during training. The boy, no more than 14, watched with wide eyes as bones aligned themselves, as torn tissue knitted back together with barely a scar to mark the injury. "Does it hurt?" he asked, voice pitched higher with nervousness. "Not at all." Harper smiled, withdrawing her hands as the healing completed. "Flex your fingers for me." The boy obeyed, his expression shifting from fear to wonder as he realized the arm that had been useless minutes ago now moved perfectly. "Thank you, Luna." The title still felt strange, even after 3 months. Luna Harper, the maid of the Alpha King, the human who'd become something more, something the shifter world had never quite seen before. "Be more careful next time," Harper told him gently. "Just because I can heal you doesn't mean you should take unnecessary risks." The boy nodded solemnly and left, already testing his restored arm with the resilience of youth. Harper cleaned up her workspace, organizing the herbs and medical supplies that supplemented her supernatural healing. She'd learned that while her ability could fix injuries, it worked best in combination with traditional medicine. Balance, as Callum often reminded her, was key to everything. Her laptop sat on the desk in the corner, a reminder of the life she'd maintained despite her new role. She'd rebuilt her freelance portfolio carefully, taking only select clients whose projects genuinely interested her. The money no longer mattered. Callum had paid off every debt she'd accumulated, had offered her unlimited access to resources she'd never dreamed of having. But Harper worked because it kept her grounded, kept her connected to the person she'd been before shifters and mate bonds and impossible transformations. Luna was who she'd become, but Harper Bennett, the graphic designer, was who she'd always be at her core. "Another successful healing?" Vivian's voice came from the doorway, her mother looking healthier than she had in years. Harper turned, smiling at the sight. Vivian's hair had grown back, silver white and striking. The gauntness that cancer had carved into her features had filled out with proper nutrition and Harper's regular healing sessions. She'd never be completely cured. The cancer lurked in remission, managed, but not eliminated. But she had time now. Years, possibly. Time she'd thought was forever lost. "Broken arm," Harper confirmed. "Training accident. How was your lunch with Margaret?" Vivian's expression softened. Margaret had been her childhood friend from Millbrook Pack, someone she'd thought lost forever when she'd been banished 28 years ago. Their reunion had been tearful, joyous, healing in ways that went beyond Harper's abilities. "Wonderful. She's invited us both to visit Millbrook next month. The new Alpha wants to formally welcome me back." Vivian shook her head, still marveling at how life had shifted. I never thought I'd see my homeland again. Never thought I'd be accepted back. Callum made it happen. You made it happen, sweetheart. He pardoned me because of you, because you're his mate, and he'd move heaven and earth for you. Harper couldn't deny it. Callum had used his considerable authority to smooth every obstacle, to ensure both Harper and Vivian found acceptance in this world. But he'd done it because he loved her, not because he felt obligated. The distinction mattered. Evening found Harper in the quarters she shared with Callum, reviewing designs on her laptop while he worked through paperwork at his desk. The domestic normalcy of it struck her sometimes. The Alpha King, ruler of vast territories and countless packs, filling out reports like any other executive. Her, working on a logo design for a tech startup, occasionally glancing up to admire how the lamplight caught in his dark hair. Griffin's getting mated, Callum said without looking up from his work. Harper's head snapped up. What? When did this happen? Last week. He's been courting Jade for months, apparently. She finally agreed to the claiming ceremony. Callum's lips curved in a rare, genuine smile. He tried to keep it quiet, but you can't hide that kind of joy. Jade from the security detail? The same. She's fierce, intelligent, and doesn't take any of his nonsense. They're perfect for each other. Harper saved her work and closed the laptop. I'm happy for him. He deserves someone who sees how incredible he is. We all deserve that. Callum set aside his papers, his silver eyes finding hers across the room. Some of us are just lucky enough to find it. The claiming mark on Harper's neck throbbed pleasantly, responding to the intensity in his gaze. 3 months hadn't dulled the mate bond's power. If anything, it had grown stronger, the connection between them deepening with every shared moment. Harper stood and crossed to the window, looking out over the compound grounds. Lights dotted the landscape, marking homes and buildings where hundreds of shifters lived their lives. Her people now, in a way she'd never expected. She'd spent the last 3 months learning their customs, understanding their struggles, finding ways to help that went beyond healing injuries. A training program for young shifters with healing abilities. A meditation practice for controlling partial shifts. A support group for those who'd lost mates or family members. Harper had discovered that being Luna meant more than standing beside Callum at formal events. It meant genuinely caring for the people who looked to them for leadership. I never imagined this, Harper said softly. When I left my window open that night, I thought my life would stay exactly as it was, struggling to survive, caring for my dying mother, never seeing anything beyond the next medical bill. Callum appeared behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. His warmth surrounded her, familiar and comforting. Regrets? Not even one. Harper leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her spine. Though I have to admit, I still can't shift into full wolf form. Griffin says it might never happen. Does that bother you? Harper considered the question. Her wolf was real, present, accessible. She could partial shift at will now, could call upon enhanced senses and strength when needed. The healing ability she'd discovered was rare and valued. But she'd never achieved the full transformation that came so naturally to others. Sometimes, she admitted, when I see you in wolf form, all that power and grace, I wonder what it would feel like, to be that free. You're free now. Callum's lips brushed the claiming mark, making her shiver, free in ways that matter more than shifting. Free to be exactly who you are, without apology or explanation. He was right. The council had recognized her worth, not because she could transform completely, but because of what she brought to their world. Healing, compassion, a different perspective on strength that didn't rely solely on physical dominance. Griffin mentioned something today, Callum continued, his voice carrying a careful note. About pups, about whether we'd considered having them. Harper's breath caught. They'd been so focused on stabilizing the territory, on navigating the political aftermath of Victor's challenge, that they hadn't seriously discussed the future beyond the immediate present. Is that something you want? She asked. Eventually. Callum's arms tightened around her. Not now. Not when we're still building what we have. But someday, yes. I'd like to see what kind of children we'd create together. The image bloomed in Harper's mind. Small children with silver eyes and her hazel ones, teaching them to shift, to heal, to navigate the complex world they'd inherit. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Would they be like me? Harper wondered. Partial shifters with unusual abilities? They'd be ours. That's all that matters. Harper turned in his arms, facing him fully. The lamplight cast shadows across his features, highlighting the strong lines of his face. This man who'd crashed into her life and changed everything. This impossible creature who looked at her like she held the moon and stars in her hands. I love you, she said simply. I know. Callum's smile was soft, private, meant only for her. I feel it every moment through our bond, just as you feel how completely I love you. It was true. The bond hummed between them constantly, a golden thread that connected their hearts and souls. Harper could sense his emotions, his presence, his unwavering devotion, and he could sense hers, could feel how deeply she'd fallen for the Alpha King who'd chosen her against all logic and tradition. Outside the window, the compound settled into evening rhythms. Lights dimmed in training facilities. Families gathered for dinner. The moon rose over distant trees, painting everything in silver and shadow. Do you remember that night? Harper asked. When you climbed through my window bleeding and desperate. I remember thinking I was dying, Callum said. And then I woke up to see you watching over me. This fierce human who'd saved a stranger without question. I felt the mate bond snap into place, and I knew my life would never be the same. Mine either. Harper touched the claiming mark on his neck. Mirror to her own. Best thing that ever happened to me. Even though it scared me senseless at the time. Still scared. Terrified. But in a good way. The kind of fear that comes from having something precious to lose. Callum captured her hand, bringing it to his lips. You won't lose me. Not to challengers, not to politics, not to anything. We're bound for life, remember? Forever. Forever. He agreed. They stood together at the window, watching moonlight transform the world beyond. Harper thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago. Alone, overwhelmed, convinced her life would never be more than survival. That woman wouldn't recognize who Harper had become. Luna. Healer. Mate to the most powerful shifter in the territory. But she was still herself underneath all the titles. Still the girl who'd left her window open on a hot summer night, never imagining that simple action would lead to this moment. To love and belonging, and a future that stretched beyond the next crisis. Ready for bed? Callum asked, his voice carrying intimate promise. Harper smiled, feeling the bond pulse with warmth between them. Always. They closed the window together, shutting out the night and the world beyond. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new opportunities to prove themselves as leaders. But tonight was theirs alone, and Harper intended to savor every moment. 3 months ago, she'd been Harper Bennett, struggling freelancer with a dying mother and no hope for the future. Now she was Luna Harper, mate to the Alpha King, healer of the broken, bridge between two worlds that had never quite understood each other. And as Callum led her toward their bed, as the claiming mark throbbed with pleasure and promise, Harper knew with absolute certainty that she'd found exactly where she belonged. Not in the life she'd planned, but in the one fate had written for her the night she left her window open and let destiny climb through.